And welcome to this week's Marketing Gem, where a panel of experts talk about various marketing issues and how they relate to SMEs. If you want to get in touch with us, you can via the Twitter feed, which is at the Marketing Gem, which you can see below my name. And as usual, we have a panel of experts joining us. This week we're talking about market segmentation. A couple of weeks ago we talked about about marketing plans. We've always used the word segmentation and everything, and there's kind of been an assumption that everyone knows what we're talking about. Well, not everyone does know, so therefore we're going to go back and talk about the first parts of the marketing segment, about the first parts of how you segment the market and why it's important. So, as usual, I'm joined by Alan Livingston from B2B Marketing. Alan has 25 plus years of experience in marketing life sciences and working with SMEs and startups and helping them with their marketing development. And Alan, welcome.
Thank you, Diane. This is a very key topic that I think we're going to discuss today, because I hope by the end of it we'll all understand that not all customers are the same, and we need to be presenting our offering to particular segments of the market if we're to be successful.
Great, thank you. And we're also joined by Kevin Lynch, and Kevin has wide experience in the advising clients on digital media and in the broadcasting sectors throughout the UK and indeed Europe. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thanks, Diane. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to tackling this topic of segmentation. For me, it's always been really to do with what's in a Terry's chocolate orange.
Okay, that's great. I'm hoping that Jonathan Darby can join us, but I have had a few problems with his line. Jonathan, are you there? No, obviously not. Okay, so that's not a problem, because this week we also have a guest speaker with us, a guest panel member, and this week it's Laurie Bernard, who some of you may have seen on some of the other Link for Growth TV shows that's going around. Laurie has a wealth of experience in sales and marketing, most recently at Wenta, which is the Watford business area enterprise park. So welcome to the show, Laurie.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great honour to be with the experts today.
Good, good. And perhaps you could tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit more, to give people a background, because I think they're familiar with everyone else.
Well, I grew up locally in a family business, and I knew I wasn't cut out to be a ladies' hairdresser like my dad, so I went to college, business studies degree, went into top-end electrical retail management, got a further degree, became a full member of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. From there I moved to Lombard the Finance House in a marketing and special projects role, from there to a Lloyd's subsidiary, from there to Xerox Credit Europe in a marketing and planning role. And when they closed down their European operation, I had a load of skills but no job, so I started my own business, the Business Services Partnership. And a lot of that work has been funded by working with government bodies such as Wenta and the Business Growth Service.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Laurie. We look forward to your contribution. Okay,
Thank you.
As I said earlier, so during the last few weeks we've talked a lot about marketing plans, marketing segmentation, marketing this, marketing that, but we don't always define those terms. Now, segmentation is a huge subject. You speak to any marketeer about it, they will go on about how you segment, and they'll talk a long time about it with great detail and great passion, because if you get it right, it can have huge benefits for your business. If you get it wrong, it can mean failure. It is that important that you start to get these sorts of things, or companies start to get these things, thinking about them, and start to think about how they can improve their segmentation and get better when they're looking at what both they're doing in the market and what their competitors are doing in the market. So, Alan, let's start with your thoughts and comments on this subject, please.
Well, segmentation is the key to differentiation, and if you do not differentiate your product offering, then you're just selling a Me Too product, and generally speaking, customers will probably just buy on price if that's the case. Once you differentiate your product, you can command a higher price for that particular product or service, and in that particular case, you can obviously be more successful. So to me, the key to differentiation is segmenting the market so that you are approaching the market or approaching the segment of the market that you're going after with an appropriate offering. Now, you can still go after multiple segments in a market, but your offering may be slightly different. So I look forward over the coming hour to be able to discuss how we go about segmenting markets.
Okay, Kevin, your expertise is more in the digital media market rather than traditional marketing, but how would you start to segment for a digital market?
First of all, we talked a lot about segmentation, and when I was at college, I struggled with that concept, but I had a very good professor who explained to me. He said, it's a very simple idea. It's just, if you're a man and you have 1 million candles and you want to sell 1 million candles, you can try being a candle shop and people will come to your candle shop, but people use candles for religious reasons. So what you do in your segmentation is, around Halloween, you have Diwali candles. You have a beginning of December, you have your Hanukkah candles. At Christmas, you have your Christmas candles. So it's the same product, but it's presented to the target market in a way that they can connect with it. So that's what segmentation is. In terms of the digital world, typical examples of segmentation that I can think of is things like to do with people and their online banking. Online banking has been developed for a certain sort of segment of the population. It's for people with incomes of, say, over £25,000 a year up to about 4 million. And within that arena, banks will compete for custom by having various offers and incentives and things like that to try and get segments that they see are uniquely profitable for them, because that's the trick. There's no point in segmenting if at the end of the day you can't make a better profit through exploiting the segment.
Okay, Laurie, you've advised dozens and dozens of clients, especially SMEs, over the last few years, as I said, through your work at Winter, and indeed as part of your own consultancy. So what do you say to clients when they say, okay, what's segmentation and why is it important?
I think they actually come at it from a slightly different angle. You ask them who is their market, and they say, well, everybody's my customer. And that's a big problem, because they cannot afford to market to everybody, and everybody isn't their customer. They may be, but they need to picture who their ideal client is. So I often get people to visualize who their ideal client is, age, sex, where they live, what sort of business, this is they're in, if it's business to business or if it's business to consumer. What car would they drive? What car would they aspire to? Where do they shop? Where do they holiday? All those aspects, because I think they need to find out or visualize their ideal client to start to identify the correct segmentation to attack. And I think, sometimes when we use marketing talk, we confuse the clients in that respect.
Okay, so do you think that it's something that is not well known about at all amongst the SME business community, or is it that there is some awareness out there but they don't understand it?
I think it's more that when people start, they get quite desperate to get business in from wherever, and so they tend to go off in all sorts of directions at once and spread them far too thin, sales too thin, and their marketing too thin, and therefore it's a barrier to success.
Okay, Alan, would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. It really is bringing your forces to bear, as it were, on a particular part of the market in order to differentiate yourself and to be more successful with that particular market segment. I mean, if you think of the car market, all cars will get you from A to B, but there's countless numbers of models, manufacturers and things out there, and they're each offering a different thing to different people. So I mean, in loose terms, you can think of that as a market that is segmented. Otherwise, we'd all be driving the same car, I guess. Back to the days of the Ford Model T.
I don't remember those days, but maybe Kevin does, or perhaps Kevin could throw some light on about segmenting not only products but services as well.
I think to me the classic example of segmenting service is the sort of international transoceanic airplane business model. 90% of the people on the plane are at the back, and they have a service. Seats are small, constrained, food services variable to say the least. The 10% at the front of the plane are providing 90% of the revenue that actually gets the plane from where it takes off to where it goes. These people have nice big seats, the best food and wines that can be obtained, and it's on that basis that airlines can afford to travel intercontinentally. That model, with all its inherent costs, clearly didn't make sense when people were just flying a couple of 100 miles across water or whatever, and that then provided a space for the low-cost carriers to come in. Great example of segmentation for me.
Okay, but it's not just big airlines, is it? It is also to do with small companies like, say, a plumber might segment the market by being the quickest to respond or offer a higher level of service. I mean, at the moment, the examples we're mostly talking about tend to be with bigger companies to illustrate the point of segmentation, but it's something that the smaller companies have to do, wouldn't you say, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, if you take an example of a plumber, speed's one thing. It could also be that they might offer a 3-day checkup on your system after they've been. So what that's doing is for those that are worried about, springing a leak in the future, it's increasing the confidence. Yes, it's a cost to the plumber because he's got to come back out. But I mean, you can differentiate your service in numerous ways, whether it's offering additional services, or offering an additional product, for example. But the more that you offer and the more you can differentiate your service, the higher a price you can usually charge the customer, and therefore ultimately it should be that you are more profitable. And when going back to things like what we've talked over the last couple of weeks, we can have it all builds reputation, so there's that side of things as well.
Yeah, and of course, with plumbers, some of them are just companies full of lady plumbers, for example, aren't they, Laurie?
Yes, indeed, and I think it's horses for courses or for the marketplace. So a lady plumber would make an elderly lady feel very happy coming into their home. And also you can then start to divide possibly, if somebody is very religious in certain communities, they would feel very uncomfortable being on their own in the home with a gentleman plumber, particularly as they seem to, when they bend over, it's not always the most attractive of sights. So I think that could be quite an advantage. But you need to be probably, if you were in Golders Green or Southall or somewhere where you've got very orthodox religious communities, and maybe ladies being there on their own, the female plumber or the female taxi driver is a very valuable commodity.
Yes, would you agree with that, Kevin?
Absolutely. People look for products and services that reflect their own deep psychological needs, and as entrepreneurs, it's our role to have insight into what are the trends that are shifting, how can we apply those to products and services that can make money, and you know, I mean, part of the thing, I guess, these days, people are feeling a little bit lazy. You know, they can't even be bothered to go around to the takeaway. So things like Just Eat and Curry's Online and all those sort of services, they've all come. They've recognised that, you know, here is a need, and we can see a need. We can see a way to serve this need cost effectively, and along the way to make money for all the people in the process. Great bit of segmentation.
Okay, so you're looking at, or you're watching the Marketing Gem, which is a Link for Growth sponsored TV program, and you can reach us on Twitter via the Marketing Gem if you have any questions or have any suggestions as to future topics that we should cover. But Laurie, so how do you actually start to segment the market? We've talked a little bit about, you know, what it is and why it's important. But how do you actually start?
I think often it's a question of what resources you have available. So it's what resources you have available to market your company, and what resources you have to be able to deliver your product or service. Because if all of a sudden you were to get a huge order from a major supermarket, you may not be able to give the level of service that you wish to give, because you just cannot cope with that order. I had a client, for instance, who slightly off track there, but actually did a Groupon promotion, got 10 times the volume of business that he normally does, lost £5 on every sale he made, and had to employ extra staff to get all the orders out. And then he had a dearth of business afterwards because everybody had bought their stuff on the Groupon promotion, because he didn't really plan ahead with the resources that he had available in the business. And, you know, it would be great to put, you know, if you could afford it, you might want to put an advert in Metro magazine because you're looking to target Metro males. But if you can only produce 100 specialist aftershaves a week for the Metro Mail, and you're paying £32,000 for a page advert in the Metro, it's not really going to pay the results and be a good return on your investment. So being able to segment your market with the resources you have available is essential.
Yeah, I mean, Alan, that's quite an important point, isn't it? You need to be able to audit the market, but you also need to make sure that if you do segment the market and advertise to a certain group, that you can meet their needs and demands.
Yeah, I mean, really, it all starts with the market audit. You have to understand the whole market, as it were. Decide on which particular segment it is that you want to go for, and then bring all your forces, as it were, to bear on that. Now, when it comes to segmentation, the most successful segments are needs-based segmentation. So, you know, all of these customers that you're trying to approach should really have the same needs, the same wants. And as was discussed earlier, it's a pretty good thing to do is to try and imagine what a particular customer within these groups looks like, so that you get a real understanding of what's driving them to make a particular buying decision or purchase of a product or a service. All these groups, the key thing about segmentation is that so they have to be homogeneous, the segments. So everybody within that particular segment is effectively thinking the same way. They have to be distinct from other segments so that you can determine what the offering that you've got is appropriate for that segment. And examples of segments, some might be that your product does something faster, or it's more accurate, or it's a particular color, for example. These are all examples of segmentation. They also then, when it comes to the actual market itself, that you want to go after, it has to be accessible to you. There's no point in going after something if you cannot access that particular market, either because you don't have the resources or the staff to either make the product or even contact these particular customers if it's a service you're offering. And finally, there has to be a viable segment as well. You don't really want to go after segments of half a dozen customers. So you know, I'm a great believer in the HDAV, which is homogeneous, distinct, accessible, and viable for market segmentation. And then once you've got that, that's where you can start to differentiate your products.
Kevin?
Do you want me to give you an example of
Yes,
how
please.
how you would actually go about doing a particular segmentation?
Yeah, I think that would be useful. Yes.
Yeah, well, what to do is as we've talked in previous weeks, you go out there and talk to your customers, find out what it is that they are particularly wanting. Whether it is, as I've mentioned already, is that they want something faster, or do they want something, everybody obviously wants things cheaper. So segmentation based on price is not usually a good segmentation to go for. What you need to do is find something that's a hook to them. So, like in the case of the plumbers that we've talked about, is it a female-only service? Is it checkups that you're offering? Do you offer a particular type of tap that maybe has a longer guarantee than somebody else? So find out what it is that customers are wanting. Are they after the speed of service? Are they after the quality of products? Or what is it that they're looking for? Do a questionnaire if necessary. Question your customers. We've talked in the past about win-loss calls. If you lose a particular account, find out why, and then you can start to build a picture of the total market. And if you do it well enough, you can start to define the size of the market as well. Is 25% of the market after, say, speed and quality, whereas another 33% of the market might be after, I don't know, quality in a particular color or something like that. So start to define the sizes of the segments, and then pick the particular one that you want to address, and therefore you can start to differentiate your offering by matching your product or service to the needs of the particular customers in that segment. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. Laurie, I presume that you would agree with most, if not all, of that that Alan has been talking about. But also, you need to think about what your competition are doing, don't you?
Yes, you do, and I totally agree with what has been said before. But I think that sometimes the person who just spoke was talking about pricing. And actually, sometimes by pricing too cheaply, people won't think you're any good. And I think it was John Ruskin who had a very famous quote, who said, if you buy something as the cheapest price in the market, be prepared to put some money aside to put things right when things go wrong. And I think that the temptation is to often to differentiate yourself by being the cheapest player on the marketplace. And people just won't think you're any good. And I quite agree that you need to do the research to find out what your competitors are charging and what they're doing and what are the advantages, and you need to be there or thereabouts, or possibly even more expensive. If you are giving a premium service, then people will expect to pay a premium price for it. But the corollary of that at the moment is I've noticed that cash flow is getting tighter in the marketplace the last few months. And that's something I've been hearing on the grapevine. So you may need to also review your credit terms when dealing with your clients, maybe get more payments in advance if you're providing a service, so that you're not going to be caught out on cash flow. Because if you give clients extended credit and acting as a bank for them, you could actually be losing money on that side too. So don't be tempted to cut prices. Demonstrate that you're giving a fantastic return on investment for the product or service that you're providing.
Okay, Kevin, how would you use technology to help you differentiate yourself from a competitor?
That's probably the single biggest change in the in the last 20 years in the market. Every transaction that is done these days is monitored by a computer buying it and a computer selling it. There's hordes of data that can be analyzed. Many companies are using big data, and in this context, what they're doing very sophisticated cluster analysis, so that they can see in the buying patterns, they can see patterns and segments. A typical example of that sort of thing is Dell will often have a big push on selling computers, and they're watching the rate at which those computers are selling, and they realize they're going to start to have a parts crunch. So then at that point, they're starting to adjust their offers online, so that that they're now offering, a big incentive to take another disk drive, which they have, 20,000 of, that they can access easily, other than the ones where they have 5,000. So at this point, the marketer really has to be able to work with the IT people, and they have to work through the sales scenarios. So for SMEs, it's hard for them to access those tools because they're just not operating at the scale. But the thing to do is, think like a ninja. Those guys have got machine learning, sure, but at the end of the day, the humans beat the Terminator. So you just have to think, these guys are smart. How am I going to be smarter? Like people with Groupons and stuff, to try and, I mean, that's a poor analysis with Groupon. I mean, for things like if I'm doing offers on Groupon, I'm basically looking at that stuff that I do out of the base capacity of my business, and I know that the cost of me delivering that offer is the cost of delivering that offer is sustainable, and I'm going to construct the offer so that I don't cannibalize my high margin sales, and these are all, as Jonathan and Alan Endley's talking about, these parameters should be identified prior to going to market through your marketing audit.
So Laurie, not every small company is going to be able to have access to kind of like lots of data. A lot of it might be to just look at the sales ledger at the end of each month or something like that. So how can they interpret the information they're getting from their invoice ledger, sales ledger, and how can they use that to help them segment the market?
Well, I think they can see where their business is coming from the areas where the money's coming in. But I think there's a couple of other tools they can use on top of that, and it does go back to continual market research. And we've got tools. There's something very interesting on LinkedIn where people endorse you, which shows actually what they think you're good at delivering. And that may actually help your market segmentation by looking at things like that. Or even, as my colleague said earlier, doing some actual market research and maybe using something like SurveyMonkey, where you can do 100 surveys free of charge to find out what the market is thinking of you. Because it's not what you think the market wants, it's what the market wants from you that is important.
Yes, you would agree with that, wouldn't you, Alan?
Yes, 100%. And going back to Laurie's earlier point as well about price, I've never been one all through my career to want to lower prices, because if you start lowering prices, then you're in a sort of hiding to nothing. Because if you're in a business that's only got 10% net margin, if you cut your prices by 5%, you've actually halved your selling price by 5%. You are halving your net margin as well, so you're reducing it by 50%. So you have to sell a heck of a lot more to make the same profit. So I think it's all about differentiating your product so that you can maximize the price recovery in segmentation. And there will be segments that are not appropriate to you. Don't waste your efforts. Don't waste your valuable resources. Don't waste your marketing costs in marketing to these particular segments, because they will cost you more money in order to access them than you'd be willing to pay. So you'll be much more successful by focusing your efforts on the segments that are more aligned to your business model and more aligned to where you want your profits to come from. And one of the key things that I think is make sure that you put together a business plan. By writing it down, by doing the segmentation, you can actually, it reinforces what it is that you're trying to achieve. There are numerous textbooks out there that will help you to come up with good marketing plans, how to devise segmentation. They'll be available from local libraries, as well as you can obviously get them from bookshops or Amazon, for example.
Yeah. So, Kevin, would you agree with that? That the segmentation is the first stage, and by segmenting correctly, you're starting to understand your audience. That's the first stage of writing your marketing plan.
Definitely, and one of the points Alan was making about, you can't serve all the market. The very famous story about Norwich Union, where they were taking quotes from people online, and they were getting the details of their driver history, so they knew the segment that they wanted. They also knew the segment of risky drivers they didn't want to take, and they used to, in terms of helping their profitability and their performance, used to suggest that they actually go to specific competitors, so that they recognized that was business that they couldn't make money out of, but they were happy to pass that tricky business for them to the competition. So these things, I mean, the most important thing, what Alan was saying earlier, I thought was the bit about write it down. So many people in the SMEs, it's all in their head, and memory is deceptive. Write the plan down, make sure that it makes sense, show the plan to a couple of trusted people, and then once every 3 or 4 months, go and look at your plan, see, are you on track? And if it's not working out, you say, well, what can I do different? Very, very important. And in terms of if you were interested in trying to find some of those books, just tweet us at The Marketing Gem, and we'll certainly be able to provide details of some useful books to read in terms of building the marketing plan and getting your segmentation right.
Laurie, how important or how easy is it to learn from what your competitors are doing to help you differentiate your market segment?
Competitors, it depends what business you're in. If you're in business to consumer or on a low ticket value, is actually to be a customer of your potential competitor and actually do some work or do some mystery shopping on them. We've just undertaken a mystery shopping campaign for an IT software supplier, and it's been amazing what information their competitors will reveal just by phoning them up and saying, hey, I've got a friend who's thinking of buying your product, can you tell me all about it? And we've got a plethora of information to deliver to the client this week, which I think is going to be totally mind-blowing. So be a competitor, or possibly mystery shop your competitors, and you'll get a wealth of information.
Yeah. So, Alan, Laurie just explained how you can get some information on your competitors, but it's just more than just being able to do a mystery shop or just being a customer of them, isn't it? You can get information from other sources, such as networking, for example.
Yeah, I mean, short of industrial espionage, anything I think is fair game. Talk to your customers, find out what they think of your competitors, talk to their customers who aren't necessarily your customers. They will, in most cases, will open up. Some obviously may not, but get as much information. Read about, it depends whether they're, I guess a small company may not have the same amount of online information that's available for a public listed company, where you can obviously get hold of annual reports and all sorts of things like that. But again, it depends on the nature of the business. Hotels, restaurants, things like that. You can find out a lot of information from sources like TripAdvisor, and you search the bulletin boards. But anything I think is fair game in finding out what your competitors are up to. And what you need to do at the end of the day is you have to, in the particular segment that you are going after, is offer, a better service to the customer than your competitors are doing if you're wanting to command a higher price to that particular sector. Now, it could be that it's not just the product per se itself. It's everything that the way you go to market, how you represent yourself, and also your reputation as part of it to play as well. So it's the whole tangible and intangible offering that you are offering the customer that a customer thinks of when they are weighing up in their mind to make a particular purchase. And it's all about that whole cloud of making sure you are having a differentiated offering to your competitor for that particular segment.
Okay, thank you. So, Kevin, how can you use digital resources to work out what your competitors are doing and what their offering is?
Very much the things that Alan was saying earlier, but not just talk to the customer and the customer's customer, but also talk to the vendors. Classic example is people like Apple will never say how many iPads or anything that they ship worldwide, but you go and talk to the screen manufacturers and they'll say, yep, we did 10 million a quarter last month to Apple. Actually, Apple's pretty smart and they've stopped them from saying that sort of thing, but you get them in the bars at the trade show afterwards and people will tell you numbers. So it's look at the whole landscape when you're trying to put that stuff together.
Okay, that's great. So we're starting to run out of time. So very briefly then, what would be the one thing that you would recommend to people when they're thinking about differentiation and segmenting the market? Kevin?
I think the most important thing is make sure that your plan works, that it can serve 100 units, 1,000 units, 10,000 units, and make sure you know your costs so that you can deliver that sustainably. And after that, you're on the road to success.
Okay, that's great. And Laurie, what would be the one thing you say to your clients, or you do say to your clients when you're talking about segmenting the market and differentiation?
I think it's all about knowing your customer and knowing what they want and making sure there's enough of those customers in the marketplace and you have the resource to deliver it, to make it to make the money that you need to achieve your objectives that you've set down in your plans.
Okay, and Alan?
Yeah, I mean, I just reiterate what Laurie's just said. Rather than talking about the one thing, as I go back to what I said previously, make sure your market's homogeneous, it's distinct from other segments, it's accessible to yourself, and that's in terms of your resources, and as Laurie's just finally said, it's a viable market. There's no point in developing your whole company based around 2 or 3 companies.
No, yeah, so my point would also be that if you are going to do it, it's just make sure that you can actually deliver what you promise. Because otherwise you won't, as an SME, you might never recover from that particular failure.
Yeah, that comes back to the reputation that we discussed last week.
Yes, exactly. I mean, so many of these things are interlinked, which is why, at the beginning of the show we said it's such a big subject and such an important subject that nothing in marketing is ever isolated, is it, Laurie?
No, and the business is as strong as its weakest link. So you need to make sure all the links are strong and that you've got continuity to go forwards. As your business grows, you may not be able to give the same level of personal service you have on startup, where it's all down to you and you're in charge of it. So you've got to be planning how you're going to grow that and maintain that level of service. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is sometimes the best companies don't sell the best product or service, but they often have the best marketing that conveys that message to their key segment of the marketplace.
Yeah, and that applies to small companies as well as large, doesn't it, Alan?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Okay, that's great. Okay, well, you're watching the Marketing Gem. This week we've been talking about marketing segmentation and differentiation. Hopefully you found the show interesting so far. And of course, you can get in touch with us through the Marketing Gem on Twitter at the Marketing Gem. And each week I ask our panel of experts to give us one tip of the week, and it doesn't have to relate to the subject we've been talking about earlier. So, Kevin, let's start with you. What's your marketing tip of the week?
Well, I was very impressed by Alan's HDAV acronym, so I did a bit of Googling, and comes from a book called Making Marketing Happen by Dr. Brian Smith. Seems a bit pricey, £35, but I think that's a book that will certainly give you intellectual substance to your marketing planning.
Yeah, I must admit it's an acronym I hadn't heard before, so I will no doubt be asking Alan for more details afterwards, because it's not one I'm familiar with. Laurie, what would be your general tip of the week?
The best entrepreneurs always look 2 steps ahead. But just coming back on Kevin's point there, you don't necessarily have to buy the book. You can go to a good library and borrow it.
Exactly, as indeed Kevin said earlier. And Alan?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to talk about books as well, in that, I mean, I think Brian Smith's a lecturer up at Cranfield University Business School. Another lecturer up there is Malcolm MacDonald, and I like this book, Marketing Plans. Excellent read, very readable, and it's available from most good libraries. You don't have to buy it because it's about this one is about £30, but you can get second-hand copies.
Well, if we're going to talk about books, then I would talk about this one when I was doing my MBA at Warwick. But my point is that tip of the week is that just make sure that if you do an offer, before you do the offer, that you have resources in place to sustain and fulfill the expected income in the way that, so again, it comes back to the audit, as it often does. But this is not only an audit of your marketing segments, it's also an audit of your operational bits and how the operations can work with the marketing bit. We've heard from Laurie how someone did an offer and it actually ended up costing them a lot of money rather than making a profit, because they just went with the idea and didn't think it quite through. Okay, well, that's this week's Marketing Gem. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please get in touch with us and let us know. If you haven't, please get in touch with us and let us know. And if you've got ideas for future topics and subjects that you want explored, then please join us. Great thanks to Laurie, who stepped in at the last minute to take over from Jonathan, because we weren't quite sure if he was going to be available, and Catherine, who we knew couldn't be available today. Hopefully they'll both be back next week. Maybe Laurie will appear at some other time in the show, and you can contact us, as I said, at the Marketing Gem via Twitter. Okay, so cheerio.